there's a lot of good memories in this very room for me, actually. I studied law at this campus, and my friend and colleague Paul Fletcher, who is the member for Bradfield, he has assumed what was his position 30 years ago at the front of the class, and I was right up the back with those people that were nursing hangovers, trying to understand what the equity lecturer was talking about. Needless to say, he was a prize student, and I just scraped through, but managed to talk my way into a job and then eventually into Parliament. So, awesome, yeah, it's a great career path. And immensely rewarding. So it is, everyone's asked me tonight, why am I here? And how did I get to know Clarry? I drive to Canberra when Parliament sits. I leave home at about 8 o'clock on a Sunday night and get a cup of cold coffee along the way and drive 3.5 hours to get into Canberra on that Sunday night. And I was listening to James O'Loughlin interviewing Clarry, and in fact James O'Loughlin was sitting at right next to Paul Fletcher at the front of the class that we were in all those years ago. And it was a rather compelling interview. Clarry was talking about how it all started, his engagement with a family that itself had members who were engaged in child labour. And the more I listened to the interview, the more I thought, this guy is a bloody good guy. And what a good Australian. And it wasn't that long ago, probably a year, maybe a year and a half. I can't remember the exact time. But it also fell in neatly with my own changing views. I entered Parliament in 1996 with a view to serving my nation. If I had to pick up a gun to serve my nation, so be it. But thankfully I wasn't asked to do that, so I chose to enter into politics, to give something back to my country and to my community. It was the best way that I thought I could contribute. But even after 9 years as a minister, the most senior levels of the government, handing out, delivering programs worth tens and tens of billions of dollars, I still felt that my soul was not being nourished the way I was desperately keen to have it nourished. And I have been involved with the Humpty Dumpty Foundation, which raises money to buy equipment for hospitals around New South Wales for children that are very ill. And it was about 3 years ago, after having completed the Kokoda track, that I thought I needed to channel that energy. And a nurse from Lismore Base Hospital stood up at a charity event and said that a 2-year-old child had died in her arms at that hospital because the doctor was unable to find a vein in the child's body to get the life back into that child. And the piece of equipment was worth $1,800. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking to myself, my God, you can be whatever you are in the government, you can have whatever budget you want, but the bottom line is, unless a community helps a community, and unless we as individuals make sacrifices for others, then our soul is surely going to be incomplete during our life. And at that moment I turned to my wife and Phil Kearns and a number of other people and I said, we're going to make some sacrifice. And after a few red wines we thought we'd raise money by climbing Mount Everest. Thankfully, we became a little more modest in our ambition and sought out Kilimanjaro, the tallest mountain in Africa, and a mountain which the tourist brochures don't tell you, but actually 55 people die each year climbing the mountain. And so I thought that was a good challenge. And in doing so, we raised $1.6 million and managed to ensure that every hospital in Australia no matter how remote the location, has one of these $1,800 life-saving devices. Now, that's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. So when I heard Clary's interview where he was talking about making a personal sacrifice for others, I felt, I've got to get to know this guy. And I just rang him up out of the blue and said, in fact, it was Trent in my office who managed to get onto him in the end, and said, why don't you come along to this function Joe's speaking at? And out of that, I first met Clary. Now, that's the only time that I've caught up with Clary since that interview. And when he asked me to come along and speak tonight, I couldn't move quickly enough to do that. And whatever I had to move, I would move. Because he's a damn decent human being. But most importantly, I just say to each of you, no matter what you do in your life, no matter how busy your schedule is, you need to do things like this. We have to do things like this for a number of reasons. Firstly, this is about giving of self, making personal sacrifices. And only when you make a personal sacrifice, be it financial or time-wise or an endurance and effort or physical, when you make a personal sacrifice, you are truly a giver to others. And it's not the expectation of a politician that they would do this, nor any others. It is about what is good in life and what is good for you. And the second key thing is, it is the on-the-ground change that gives you the great reward. At the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, which is about 6,000 metres high, is a city of Arusha. And a young Australian woman went to Arusha some years ago and decided to try and set up a school, much like what Clary did. It was some years ago. Her name was Gemma, from Western New South Wales. And Gemma, over the years, has scraped the money together to set up a school for the poorest of the poor. And she can only take one person from each family, because that person, if they get an education and they are satisfactory from an educational perspective, that one person will hopefully be the meal ticket for the rest of the family and lift the entire community. Arusha has a population, I think, of about 1 million. So every year when they're going for the intake, people are literally throwing their children over the fence to try and get their children before Gemma and her teachers for an exam. And I wondered to myself whether, these are the poorest of the poor. And Gemma took me out to a little 9-year-old girl's home, which was right out in the middle of the sticks. And that home, she had 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, an alcoholic father, and the mother wasn't there. And the house was a lean-to with plastic wrapping on the outside, torn wrapping. The children had only the clothes on their back, and not even then did they have all of their clothes. And each of the children were so honoured to see us that they came out with their one toy. It was a broken toy or a half-filled football. And I walked around the back and saw 2 newly dug graves, which were 2 children that had recently died of malnutrition. Gemma said, this is the story of the poor. This is the story of Africa. And we give them hope. And Gemma has built a school that now has 1,200 children, has boarding facilities, and has the capacity to change the lives of generations. And she is an Australian that has given up her life to make that sort of sacrifice. Clary has started that journey with a number of supporters here. So I just want to say to you that for so long, is Clary and others are going to commit to this project in the middle of a city that has some great wealth but some unbelievable poverty, then I will throw every ounce of support, aside from whatever comes out of Canberra or anything else, because this is something that is good for all of our souls. But most importantly, we can change the destiny of people's lives. Now, in your case, if you change one person's life, just one, and you're on your deathbed at the age of 80 and you said, I have changed one person's life for the better, then you have had an enriched life. That's why we're here. I suppose that's why you're here, because you do want to make people's lives better and give people hope that they can lead a better life. And I was asked to speak about trade with India and so on. I'd just say this. Over the last, I had breakfast with Bill Gates about 3 years ago. And I asked him, it was an intimate audience, and I said, what's the most profound thing you have seen in your days? And he said, poverty alleviation over the last 20 years. We talked about it. Over the last 10, 12, 15 years, 250 million people have come out of poverty. That's as a result of free trade, education, empowerment, and hopefully the demise of World War. And primarily that is in China and India. These are nations that are determined to give their people a better quality of life, and we would all agree with that. Whether it be exporting uranium to India, which we strongly support, or be it empowering Chinese families with energy and food, and Indians with energy and food. After all, India is our 4th or 5th largest trading partner. But their nation and their leadership is about giving their people hope that they can have a better quality of life. And during the course of this Arab Spring, we are seeing young people fully informed through the advantages of new technology, understanding that they can have a better quality of life. But their destiny needs to be in their hands. And India as a democracy, as a free nation, has a vast population that is increasingly determined to be the master of their destiny. And we need to facilitate that growth and facilitate that hope rather than to be a player that does not facilitate it or ignores it or pretend it doesn't exist. So we need to export energy, we need to export food, we need to export the things that matter for people hoping to get themselves out of poverty. Most significantly, we can help to export the goodwill of the Australian people. And that's the second key part of 40K, the engagement of Australians over there and the development of our reputation as a caring, compassionate, democracy-loving nation that is tolerant of the diversity of cultures, but most importantly, wants to empower the poorest of the poor with a good education. So to all of you, thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting 40K 2.0. It's got to be more than walking out of here and feeling pretty good about things. It's where the journey begins for those of you that are not part of it. It's where the hard yards kick in, when you're frustrated about processes, when Clary or others aren't able to return your call. That's when you need to redouble your effort. When you think you've given a fair bit of money or fair bit of time or fair bit of support, that's when you need to redouble your effort. And when you've all done that, then you think about going over there, helping out, teaching, building and learning, because they're the things that make us better people. But most importantly, they help to give us that end goal. At the end of our lives, we've delivered a better quality of life for at least one more person.